Retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey and the host of the Mo Kelly Show, Mo Kelly. It's great to have you both. Love having you as regulars on the show. This is an important conversation for us to have. And Sergeant, let's start with you. Race was not an issue in the trial. It wasn't an issue in the courtroom. Why is it such of an issue outside the courtroom?
Well, I think because the genesis of this has to do with the black man, Jacob Blake, who was shot in the back 7 times by a white police officer, Rustin Sheshki. and that's what started this whole thing. And so there's a racial undercurrent. We know that, probably nothing is going to happen to this young man, Kyle Rittenhouse, based on the makeup of the jury and the fact that white folks tend to be sympathetic to their own kind. And so, people who look like me are bracing for the worst.
It may have started that way, Mo, but is it part of this trial alone? Does this case come down to primarily all white people involved, and is it a case about self-defense?
I don't know if you can extract race from this. As W.E.B. Du Bois said, that race is the most intractable issue in our nation. And let's not forget, these cases are not in a vacuum. When you talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, you have to talk about it within the context of an Ahmaud Arbery and white vigilantes. You have to talk about that, and also with respect to George Zimmerman. And also, when the Kenosha original unrest was in the same emotional space as Breonna Taylor, the same emotional space as George Floyd, which happened within a 45-day period. So it may not be explicitly about race, but we cannot separate race from this when we think about how the justice system will treat white vigilantes.
How has he been treated differently, Sergeant, in your opinion?
Well, I think because there's a belief, a perception that he's, been given special treatment, that I've seen it referenced VIP treatment. He seems, to me, his demeanor, and I don't know his heart, but he seems very kind of cavalier, very,
what part
I'm just
of the
here
trial
having a good time.
Was he treated differently, Sergeant? How was he treated differently in this trial?
I don't know that he was treated differently. I'm saying that is the perception. That's what's being bantered about on social media, that he was treated as a VIP. I don't know that to be true, but if that's your perception, then it's real in its consequence. All
right, there was a lot of talk about this case beforehand, as we all know, and we've all kind of dug in. Even the president at one point suggested Rittenhouse was a white supremacist. Jen Psaki refused to acknowledge that comment, but did say this yesterday. Let's listen.
We shouldn't have, broadly speaking, vigilantes patrolling our communities with assault weapons. We shouldn't have opportunists corrupting peaceful protests by rioting and burning down the communities they claim to represent anywhere in the country.
So, Mo, to that point, we are all dug in over what may happen here. And again, our perceptions going into this. At the end of the day, does it come down to what happened between Kyle Rittenhouse and why and how he shot these 3 people?
Well, I wish it would come down to that, but a lot of times the appearance or the suggestion of impropriety is enough for people to feel that there is impropriety. This judge, for whatever reasons, has put his finger on the scale. His decisions, his courtroom demeanor, he has not inspired confidence in the process. And so whatever verdict is rendered, it will still come back to this judge as far as dismissing the count, as far as the legal possession of the gun.
But wasn't that's Wisconsin law, though, wasn't it? I mean, I looked it up, and it basically says that Wisconsin law states the ban applies to minors armed with rifles or shotguns only if they're short-barreled. I mean, it was a ruling. I don't know what else to make of that.
Yeah, but there's not only that, it's also allowing Kyle Rittenhouse to handpick, my phrase, the own jurors, is something which is not normally done.
Right.
Which, that breeds to lack of inspiring confidence in the process itself, which leads to the verdict.
No, I get that, Sergeant. I know it's unusual, but is it wrong? I mean, he ended up pulling the one black juror in the pool. He didn't know who's who.
Well, listen, again, right, wrong. We see disparate treatment. We see disparities in how black men are dealt with in the judicial system. We know about the affluenza teen who killed 4 people and injured a total of 9 and was given probation. And so when you look at it in its totality, it always seems as if the scale tips in favor of male white when it comes to you getting a slap on the hand or your bad behavior being minimized and mitigated.
So I'm really struggling with this because I want to agree, and I think we all probably do, that if you look at the numbers, certainly the system's harder on black defendants, whether it's because of money or racism, we agree on that. But the specific facts here in this case are what I keep going back to. People are chasing him. White people are chasing him. A white person says he's going to kill him. A white person hits him with a skateboard. A white person has a gun. The reality is, as a legal matter, not necessarily a moral matter, was he justified in shooting them? And in the end, that's what the question is here.
That may be what the question of what the court is going to decide. But as far as whether people are going to accept that verdict, how they're going to respond to that verdict, this is not going to be in a vacuum. You can't separate Kyle Rittenhouse from the events of Kenosha as far as why he was there in the first place. The fact that he was able to shoot two people and was not arrested on the spot, that he was not engaged by law enforcement, the fact that he was treated very differently than other people who presumably would have been in that same circumstance. So right. I accept your point that maybe not necessarily within the confines or parameters of the case itself and the facts, but as far as how we got here and how we go from here, it does matter.
And the system itself. And Mo, you've led me perfectly into the next thing I wanted to get into. Sergeant, we'll start with you, and that's how this verdict is ultimately accepted. Here's what one of the business owners in Kenosha told us on this broadcast just a little while ago about what he is worried about and what we should learn from what happened here.
We put a Band-Aid on it, and then we wait for the next bomb to blow up. You know, I don't know what to think of it, but it's really scary. We need to work together and come together to resolve these issues and not blow up. There's better ways of doing things than burning down people's towns and neighborhoods and shooting one another.
Sergeant, can that happen after this? Are you worried that there will be more protests?
I absolutely believe there are going to be protests, and I absolutely believe that it's going to be raucous, it's going to be destructive. And, you know, I think everybody, like we do, have changed channels since this thing happened a while ago. And the people who can't change channels are the Blake family and those who are close to him. And so now here everybody's ready to erupt again, and they'll do that for a week or two, and then we'll go back to changing channels until it happens again.
Mo?
I think that the verdict will also have an impact as far as how people respond. It's one thing to protest, but you're also sending the signal, if there is an acquittal, that it is okay for as a 17-year-old to cross state lines with an assault rifle and then engage people for businesses that you don't know, that you have no connection to, and then you, if possibly, you can inspire the circumstances which may lead to you shooting someone.
All right, before we go, Sergeant, we'll start with you. Just your sort of your thoughts on what you think will happen here in the courtroom.
I believe that there'll be an acquittal based on the makeup of the jury, and I think that there'll be protests, and we'll visit this again probably in a week or two with the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Yeah, that one definitely, the racial undertones are there. Those are obvious, and I guess you would call them overtones, not undertones. Mo, what do you think happens?
I think we're going to get an acquittal on the main charges, the lesser included charges. They may be hung up on some of them because this extended deliberation suggests that with the convoluted jury instructions, they may be unclear and unsure.
Host of the Mo Kelly Show, Mo Kelly, and retired LAPD sergeant and author of The Confidence Chronicles, Black and Blue, Cheryl Dorsey, the sergeant, retired from LAPD. It's great to have both your voices tonight. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
It's a simple question. How many children have been in those cages?